Hi, this is Frank Buck, and this is the place to be if you want to get organized and make it look easy. I have a special guest for you today. Robby Burns is the band director at Ellicott Mills Middle School in Ellicott City, Maryland. When it comes to using technology and music education, Robby is definitely one of your go-to people. In fact, he's this year's recipient of the Time Teacher of the Year Award. The acronym TIME stands for Technology in Music Education. In the body of the blog post, I'll give you a link to more on that award. Now, whether you're a music educator or not, I think that you're going to find practical applications for your own work and play that you hear in this episode. So, joining me in welcoming Robby Burns. Well, Robby, welcome. It's been a while since we've talked. Glad to
Yeah, it
have you
has.
here. Yeah,
It's so fun to be on your show. I think you've been on mine a handful of times.
it's
And
all, yeah, always a blast. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I love it. I'm
Well,
here. I'm here for it.
well, yeah, well, yeah. The thing that kind of put you front of mind, where I said, I gotta email Robby and get him on the show. You just won like a national award, so tell us all about it.
So this is the Mike Covens Teacher of the Year Award from Time, and Time stands for Technology in Music Education, and they're an organization that does quite a few things. But one of I got connected through them, and I think one of their biggest goals is to provide professional development for music teachers at state level music educators associations. So I connected with them by presenting at like Ohio and Texas and several other state level like music educator conferences where if they have a relationship with them, they'll have typically booked several technology focused presenters who will be in kind of a wing of the building. Um, and so that's like a really big part of their focus. Um, they have several other things that they do, and this Teacher of the Year award is a big part of the organization as well. And I'm crazy honored to receive this award. I was nominated by a colleague actually who teaches in my very own district, Richard McCready, who is himself a recipient of this same award. And it's just hard to express how much it means to feel recognized and seen for, combining these different interests of mine in a way that maybe like it's interesting. Like sometimes I think like when I'm around tech-minded people, it's all about the tech, and sometimes when I'm with music people, it's all about the music, and when I'm with educators, it's all about the education. But when someone sort of understands that you're doing something that's uniquely you, because not because of one of those three things, but just because you're trying to be a deeply curious person and do your job the best you can, like that was kind of the framing of the nomination, at least in its written form. And so it feels really great to be seen that way, in a way that sort of accepts what I'm trying to do professionally. And so that was very exciting for me, is still very exciting for me.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, let's jump into, of course, you and I have had a number of conversations over the years about the things that we are using. So many of the people who are watching and listening are in the educational arena, not necessarily music educators. Give us an idea, kind of pull back the curtain as far as, if we walked in your band room, some of the things that we would see that other teachers, non-music teachers, might be able to go, yeah, I like that. I could do that.
Yeah, I guess it depends on like how student facing it is or isn't. And I'll be the first to say that while there is so much great technology that you can and that I do put in front of my students for accomplishing various objectives and goals, a lot of the things I do are actually where the technology is facing me and is really very invisible to my students and is really just enhancing my own layer of how informed I am and organized I am instructionally, and then like what kinds of things I'm integrating into my lessons that are making them more engaging or that are like helping sort of facilitate or break down or even demystify more complex ideas for my students. So like in the band room, for example, and this is not something that maybe a non-music educator would recognize, but I have like we have a big mixer at the front of the room with several different things going through it. One is like a Yamaha Harmony Director, which is like a keyboard that produces these tuning drones. My
Hmm?
Mac, my phone, my headset microphone, like this is all sort of like coming in a perfect mix out through the stereo speakers, which is of course helping provide a good learning environment for my students, but they don't understand that any of that is happening necessarily.
Hmm. Yeah,
Now, where a
yeah.
teacher might look over my shoulder and say, "Ooh, that looks interesting," might be like oftentimes it happens when someone says, "Ooh, what's that interesting looking app that seems to like be designed in a way where the information is easier to manage?" Or how did you just switch from one app to the other, like 1/10 the time it takes me to do that? Or some like just someone who's just like snooping or like watching how I like, get around my computer and do maybe not even different stuff, but maybe
Mhm.
the same stuff more sane or more faster.
Yeah, yeah. So like in rehearsals, the way back when we had the the teacher plan book that would be there on the stand. What do you have in front of you? Do you have a laptop up, tablet? Sort of what tech do you have that you're using to teach from?
I like the Bandroom because it's kind of the whole stack. So there's sort of like every product that Apple makes is sort of like within 6 feet of me,
Okay.
except for the headset. I don't have the headset yet, uh, but I've got the Mac, which is kind of like the primary work machine, but it's also very importantly the thing that I output audio from. So like any example recordings or play alongs or anything of that nature is going to come through the Mac, as well as the keynote presentation that shows students what they're seeing visually on the board. So that's like the thing. That's like the visual and auditory output of all content I'm using in the room. Um, then there's the keyboard I was describing, my headset microphone. My iPad is kind of like anything that would be paper, but that I've managed digitally. So a lot of times it's using
Mhm.
the app Fourscore to annotate, view, study, and read my scores that I'm conducting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has seating charts or notes. Sometimes it has all of those different apps on the screen at once. Sometimes I will walk around the band room with the headset mic and the iPad, and I can from the iPad I use the Stream Deck app to trigger soundboard sounds like play along tracks and other kind of fun sound effects that are actually running on the Mac through an app called Farrago, but it's like the iPad is sort of like
Yeah.
remotely making them happen so that I can sort of be present in parts of the room that are, you know, maybe closer proximity to students who might need a little bit more of
Mhm.
my assistance, or where I can just check, things even as basic as, I mean, I teach middle school. So like saying, please put your
Yeah.
music out on your stand does not necessarily get the
None
result.
doesn't exactly doesn't always happen. You mentioned headset mic several times. So is this so that your voice is amplified? Is that the purpose there?
Yeah, and I can't live without it. I mean, this was a COVID era purchase where we had to teach for part of a year where some students could
Right.
elect to
Yeah.
come into school, but many were still online. So we're like
Hmm.
masked, trying to project to a group class of very far spread apart, maybe like anywhere between
Absolutely. Hmm.
6 and 20 kids. Meanwhile, a Google Meet is happening that same lesson is streaming to. So we got the headset mic, and then it turns out that it's really amazing for all contexts. Like I can have the whole 60 person band playing a play along track and talk in a calm voice and be heard over
Hmm.
top all of that.
Yeah. Way back in the day, if a teacher said, well, especially, a band director said, well, I have a microphone there, then it was like, well, your classroom management skills must just be awful. The kids need to quit talking so that they can hear you. But, I've found if I'm doing a presentation and I think, hey, I don't need a mic, my voice projects, I'm fine. No, it's always better with the mic. And just like you said, you can speak in the calm voice. You're not having, if you're trying to project over the trumpets playing to not you're not yelling at them, you're trying to tell them something. Without the mic, you're really having to strain. So I can definitely see that. There's no longer the stigma that classroom management techniques just need to get better. No, it makes it easy to be heard.
Well, it makes it easy, but it is itself a classroom management technique because one of the best ways to manage a classroom is or to increase your instructional outcome is to change the ratio of quality teachers to students. And
Yeah.
let's be real, us both knowing what the way that some, band directors have, or maybe still do continue to think, the idea that what you do is like primarily like a sort of authoritative and directing kind of position, that's not actually like super hard stuff to do. But if you're
Mhm.
fixated on it, it kind of locks you into a particular mode and place in the room. If I can automate that with play along material that my students are in the routine of playing, then actual me can be wandering around the room and noticing and addressing so many things. Like it's basically like doubling myself.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds great. Um, what else? What else would someone see that they would then go back home and go, I want that?
Well, I mean, I've in our note here, in our shared note, I've got a bunch of apps. Is it cool? Like, is it something that you think someone would notice, like just watching me teach, or can I just tell you an app that most people are jazzed about whenever I show it off?
Let's do that. What people
Okay,
are jazzed
sweet.
about.
So, I mean, I think something that has bound our relationship is loving to talk about task and note apps and their many features and their many
Yes.
uses. I have never really been able to use any less than four different note apps because of how specifically good they are all at doing some kind of part of my work. Since we probably since we last recorded together in any capacity, there's been, at least in my life, I have sort of been awakened to the personal knowledge management sphere of,
Mhm.
which is not really a single app, but is more of an idea that you are sort of like creating a base of knowledge on your computers that you can sort of interconnect those bits of knowledge together, whether that's through using lots of different apps that link content into each other, or one app that's sort of within it, you create kind of like a wiki style database
Mhm.
of different tiny little notes that link together. Notion is probably the most famous and widely used of these apps. Um, so I have two that I use in my regular work, and then I'll tell you the one that has been more popular when I've presented on the topic. I'm using
Sure.
Obsidian and I'm
Okay.
using Craft. And
Hmm.
Craft is, they both do a lot of the same stuff. So I'll just explain Craft. Since Craft is very popular with people because of its really good design. Um, it's basically a natively running application that runs on, I think it's on all Apple platforms, Windows, and the web.
Hmm.
And the native app is really, really just a well-designed note-taking tool where you create more or less, it's this funny, it's this ambiguous thing. Like if you've ever known someone, or if you are that someone who does all their note-taking inside of Google Docs or Microsoft Office documents, like
Right.
those are very, very heavy tools for like writing
Hmm.
down a couple of sentences that you learned at a meeting. So using something lighter, like a more of a note specific app, can be really good. But there are these times where you want to like start to pull in like a little bit more mixed media, like have an audio recording, have an outline, have an image, have a video embedded. And what Craft and other PKM apps do is they have all that multimedia stuff that you can sort of drag into the same place, but without this concept of like, hey, there are actual pages to this document. There's no sense of this is going to be going to a printer. It's just completely designed
Exactly.
first
Yeah.
and foremost
Hmm.
for a screen and for the web specifically. And so what a couple, I mean, I could go, I could do like 7 hours on Craft, but a couple of its real big strengths. One is that, like any good personal knowledge management app, your different notes can be backlinked to each other. So I can have a note
Hmm.
in Craft that's, say, like the note represents a class that I teach. And inside of that note can be a list of all of the students I teach, but those students' names can themselves be clickable links that take me into notes each for those kids where I can track or write whatever I want to about that student. And what's interesting about it, and what I think makes Craft really good, is other than that it looks really pretty and intuitive, it's has got like a one-click button to publish something to the web. And you can share a Craft document with someone. They don't even have to have a Craft account to see it, or if you change the settings, they can edit it even. But you can, of course, share entire notebooks or workspaces with other Craft users. And you do this all through a native app if you want. But then when you publish something, it's kind of like it's really for me is serving the same function as what having a website used to for my band
Yeah,
program. Like
yeah,
a lot of content that used to be on our website, like our handbook, for example, is now just a bunch of different disparate craft docs that are all linked together and put into basically like a table of contents, which is full of like images of all the method books they need, lists of where to go find instrument rentals, all sorts of stuff. And you can kind of like click and page through this thing like it's a wiki page. But for
hmm,
us, we just edit that. Like if I find a typo in it, I can just like type into it straight like a Word doc. But then that's immediately publishes to the web version
right,
that our
yeah,
students see from their Chromebooks. So
yeah.
it's just really
So
a very,
yeah,
very powerful tool.
so like you could be sitting watching TV, and on your phone be looking through your band handbook and go, it's a typo. Touch, fix, done.
It's that easy.
Yeah, yeah. So gone are the days of log into the website, navigate to that page, save, or it's a PDF. Oh gosh. Okay, go back to the Word document, fix it, save it, save it also as a PDF. Now upload the PDF to the file section of the website and answer the question, do you want the new one to overwrite the old one? And 15 minutes later, you fix the typo, whereas now 5 seconds later, you fix the typo. Yeah.
A great example. That's perfect. And something that even just happened today in band. I was telling my students I wanted them to practice a scale exercise sheet that I had posted to this space. We call it the band wiki, and it's basically where all things that they would ever need to know or get as far as the resources are concerned. All of that stuff is in this one big giant craft network of documents. And so the bassoon player in the band raises his hand. He's like, Mr. Burns, I am pretty sure you did not actually put those in there. And I'm like, oh, let me see. And I opened up craft, and sure enough, the bassoon part was not in there. So I dragged it from the finder of my Mac into the craft area, and then I lifted my finger up, and that was it. I knew that when he got home, he would go to this website, and that PDF would be waiting for him.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of like the digital equivalent of you passed out the music. I didn't get a part, and you might go, here you go, here it is.
Yep.
Only you can do it with much more complex things and do it quickly. Yeah. So I'm really glad that you're talking about this because having a notes app and I think you really distinguished it from say Word or a Google Doc, which is where we would go to type a document. And for so long, it was um, folders within inside folders. And how do we find the documents we saved? And now it's all about how do we access the information? You know, we'll probably never print any of it out on a printer. How do you get to where? So craft, you mentioned Notion. What are some of the others, especially though the getting started kinds of thing for somebody that goes, well, I'm just keeping everything in Google Docs because I don't have anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think craft is a good starting point because a lot of people when they see it over my shoulder on my computer screen, they say, oh, or if I share something in craft with them, they usually say, oh, what is this nice thing that's better than Google Docs? Or, what is
Yeah.
this nice Google Docs you have sent me a link to? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm happy to
All
tell
right.
you. And yeah, I mean, I think like Notion is a little less nice, but it has more features. I think almost everything I said about craft you can do in Notion. I really like one called Obsidian because, and this is, you tell me if I'm getting a little too nerdy here, but I mean, the idea of Obsidian is that all of the data is actually in plain text. This company really believes in like portability of data. Like they want you in like 50 years.
You could take it anywhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like the idea is that if you've written many, many, many years of notes and then all of a sudden Microsoft Word ceases to exist, you don't have to, though this just happened in the music teaching community with Finale. Finale is
Absolutely.
beloved
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
notation software that I've moved on from many, many, many years ago, but I have colleagues who never wanted to really like break from the, embrace the mental overhead of learning new software. And even though the writing has been on the wall, it's there's been really no clear signs, no clear statement from the company that they were going to discontinue the product until this past fall, when they fairly abruptly said that they were going to stop supporting.
I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of
It's
the only times where the like people who were not like very nerdy or tech minded were like blowing up on my social media accounts with like outcry over
right. Yeah.
this software.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
but like
and for
notation, yeah,
yeah,
sorry to cut you off, but
yeah.
notation is
For those who are for those who are not familiar with, for those for the non-musicians, Finale that we've been talking about is the software where, when I was a kid, you had staff paper and you took a ballpoint pen, you had the 5 lines and four, and you sat down and you wrote it out by hand. And this is the digital equivalent where there the staff is on your keyboard and you can compose right there and even play music. And you can even sit down at the keyboard and play, and it puts the notation on the staff and then you print it out. And if you find you made a mistake, you just pull it up and you fix it. And you can compose something and then say, let's hear what I have composed. So, and it was huge. Finale has been how long in existence?
is it 40 years? It's long.
That that I'm thinking, it's almost like when people say Xerox, you know, that there are a lot of different kinds of copiers, but Xerox is sort of the one, or Kleenex, as opposed to a facial tip tissue. It's kind of like Finale. It's like that's the music writing software, and now it's no longer there. But all those Finale files that you saved were able to be converted into
Well,
what's
this is
the
exactly
new
the
one
thing. So
that's
yeah, I mean, there's a couple of other products on the market that do a really nice job of this. My personal preferred one is called Dorico, and all of
okay.
these apps can accept a file type called an XML file, a music XML
Hmm.
file, which is can be, you can export it from one of these tools and into the other. But as you can imagine, this is not the same thing as like alphanumeric keys on a keyboard. Like this is not a very simple kind of language because there's a graphical element to it and a lot of
Hmm.
symbols that need to be interpreted, both how they're spaced out visually, but also
Oh
how
yeah.
your computer's speakers produce those sounds. So while you can export these, it's out of Finale and into another software, it's really so cumbersome that if you've been in the industry doing this for 40 years, that's not a really friendly looking task you got ahead of you.
Hmm.
And so the idea of Obsidian is they're saying, well, text is one of the most useful and intimate types of data that you're going to have on your computer. We want you to, no matter what comes of us or computer, what if we're using three different operating systems that are not Mac OS and Windows and Chrome OS in 50 years from now? We want you to still be able to like take your folder of text notes and be able to open that in whatever future computing
Yeah.
platform you have. And that's the foundation of Obsidian.
Hmm.
But what's really interesting about it is that you might be thinking like, well, notes today should have things like links, files attached in them, images. Like notes can be a
Yeah.
very rich multimedia experience. And Obsidian under the hood is kind of like, this is maybe like not a very refined way of saying it, but I think people will understand this better. It's like kind of like a web browser in that it can interpret Markdown and HTML, which are two types of like syntax that can render stuff. Like if you ever look at the code of a website, where an image would be just like a string of text. You can
Hmm.
drag an image inside of Obsidian and it'll show you that image right where you dragged it. But in the actual file itself is a string of text, basically.
Yeah.
So that you can move this stuff anywhere, but you're still interacting with with very rich notes. And I like this. Craft has this too. I just like the implementation of Obsidian a little better. But both apps have a daily note where you can see a calendar on the toolbar on the
Hmm.
left or right side of the screen. And then you can basically just have a note that is for each day. And that's kind of like where my general notes, it's like my scratch pad for the day. So like any announcements I need to read to each class, any
Hmm.
to-dos that come up during class, like maybe assignments that I assigned, things I would like to assign. I just kind of dump it all in the daily note, and I can link to other notes from there. So if I have a note for each student, I can, in the daily note, I can say during the clarinet sectional today, Susan did not play the 2 octave D major scale, and I can have Susan's name would appear as like a hyperlink in the note.
Uh-huh.
Clicking on it would take me into the Susan note, and so that's kind of cool. But PKM can extend beyond just one tool, and it can be more of just a way of like kind of like linking different software together with breadcrumbs. So I use this cool thing on the Mac called Hookmark, which integrates with almost every app I have installed on my Mac. Whatever data you're looking at, you can generate a URL to the clipboard and then paste it somewhere else. So
Huh?
if I'm in an Apple Note or a calendar event or an email or any like a file in my file system, and I invoke the Hookmark shortcut, I think mine is like Shift Command Spacebar or something, I can get a link to my clipboard that then I can paste that somewhere else. So like, let's say I've got an Apple Note with like that I'm sharing with my colleague where this happened a few weeks ago. We're planning for a field trip to the band assessment together. And maybe in my daily note in Obsidian, I've been, I want to take a note that I was working on that file that day. So I can grab a link to that Apple note, put it in my Obsidian daily note, and now I'm like linking from apps to other apps as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Gone are the days when, well, this information is inside this folder that's inside this folder that's inside this folder. Everything has a link. And so you can put that link anywhere else. Yeah. And so I guess your daily notes, thinking back 40 years ago, that would have been like your paper planner, that here's a page for this day, this day, this day. Okay. I need to be reminded of this particular piece of information or this to do 2 weeks from Thursday, flip to that day in the paper planner, write it down, then you can forget about it. 2 weeks from Thursday, there it is. And so it's kind of the same thing with your daily note. You can put a message for yourself sometime in the future, and it can be text, it can be something that links to something else. And it's like your planner, your plan book, all of that right there in that program.
And you had a really good blog post you did recently. I liked where you sort of categorized productivity apps into what were your two categories, reference and action?
Reference and action, absolutely. Yeah. It to
And
me,
so
it's
like,
like if you've got a good task app and a good notes app, you're there. Of course, contacts. Of course, I think we're kind of there with contacts. Nobody has that address book anymore that they white out a phone number and write in the new phone number. Yeah, but because of our phones, it's sort of like it's got to be, it's got to be digital. And we're kind of getting there with calendar, where most people, they've realized that it's so much easier to have the calendar on your phone that's in your pocket and share calendars and things. But it seems like we lag behind with the task app. People are still writing on Post-its or just sitting at the beginning of the day with, oh, what do I have to do today? And come out with it out of their head. And then a notes app, it's sort of like, well, I got Word, I got Google Docs, and really haven't embraced the idea of a notes app. So I'm kind of like, if you've got a task app for the stuff you got to do, and a notes app for the reference information, where it's not something I have to there's no action on it, but when I need to know that information, where can I go to get that information? And you can find it when you need it. And the
it's
task
funny.
app that says boom and just sticks it in front of you without you even thinking about it.
Yeah, you're so right that like I often will, like most of my colleagues will be proficient in calendar, mail, and a couple of these other things. But yeah, it's funny how for me, what are the two most essential parts of the tech stack, so to speak, are the notes and the tasks. And those are, yeah, they're typically things that people who use computers for everything will still use paper for.
Huh.
And what's interesting is like I would when I read your blog post, I was for a moment thinking to myself, I might categorize communication as another type of productivity app, but for me, a lot of my communication is just stuff that has not yet become action or reference. like any
Uh-huh.
unread text messages or emails. And so as I, just to kind of full circle it back to the daily note concept, like I got an email from a teacher yesterday at like 3:15 p.m. Like I was kind of packing up my stuff, and it
Yeah.
said, during first period tomorrow, if it's okay with you, can you send this student to make up a test with me during your first period class? The student that I teach first period. And I was like, I'm going to definitely forget to do that. So I took
Mm-hmm.
a link to that straight into that email with the Hookmark app, and I put it into what was yesterday, tomorrow's Obsidian Daily Note. So I'm thinking about future me, and
Oh
I put it
yeah.
right in the area where I planned for my first period class, and then I deleted the email because that was not an email that required me to reply. Well, I mean, I did. I said I will send her, but it was the kind of thing where like that was like a less than 30-second email to address. But so often people's inboxes get cluttered with this kind of stuff that's actually just decisions they have not made yet.
The D word. Yes. Talk more about that. Decisions. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think decisions are paralyzing for some, but the truth is that like if you're like me, like I have the kind of brain where like I can get like blocked really, really easily
Mhm.
if my environment is. I mean, this is probably part of the reason why I'll pay for these like artisan, like indie apps that are like the nicest looking note app, because for me, the visual clutter of certain apps is enough that I get really distracted. And I'm so much trying to just have thoughts be out of sight, out of mind, and like dump them into the task app as quickly as I can. So I like there to be just like a real serious focus surrounding the way that I work,
Mm.
because it's already hard enough for me to get off task. So when
Yeah.
I'm in
Yeah.
email, I mean, like, some of the classic books have helped me to some degree. I mean, David Allen's Getting Things Done is one of those
Oh
ones, that
yeah.
helped me to kind of just
Yeah.
think it through. But I mean, if I look at my email, I mean, here, I'll even just look in it right now. I won't expose any information here, but like, I mean, I have an email from most of this, and we could talk about dealing with spam at a later time if you want. But I mean, I have two spam things. I have one thing I haven't read yet, so that stays. I have one thing that's a task. It's like I have to um, listen to some student work and then provide feedback. Like I'm going to forward that email when we get off the line here into my task app and then delete it
Yes.
from my email inbox, because that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
not something
Yeah.
I need to do right now.
And people who have followed me are going, yep, sounds just like Frank. And you go back to that simple email about something that you need to tell that, or you need to send that student to go take the makeup test tomorrow. And the way most people would handle that is they'd read the email and go, I sure hope I remember to do that tomorrow. And they leave it sitting there in the email. There's nothing they can do about it right now. It's not till tomorrow that we're going to send the kid. And they'll look at that email 17 times and go, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And then you get busy, and guess what? You forget to send the kid. And then you beat yourself up for being stupid for forgetting such a little thing. But you have such a simple thing where it's like you're looking at it, you're thinking about it right now. You take that, you put it where it needs to be, you can delete the email, you earn the right to forget about it. And then tomorrow, when you actually need to send that kid to take the makeup test, then at that point, bam, you're looking at it. You didn't remember it, it's just sitting there in front of you. Yeah. Yeah. Now, continue what you were about to talk about. Emailing, taking an email and emailing it to your task list.
Yeah. So, I mean, I use an app called Things for the Mac and iOS. I know you use apps that have similar features. I've used OmniFocus before, Todoist. All of these apps have a feature where you get a special unique email address and you forward an email to that address. And they all have
Mhm.
various different ways of handling the syntax, but usually it's something like the subject line of the email becomes the task, and then the contents
Yes.
of the body of the email becomes the attached note. I mean, when I was using OmniFocus as my to-do app, I mean, the notes field of an OmniFocus task can like support like rich
Oh,
text
you,
and
you can
images
write
and
a
stuff.
book
Like,
in there and stuff.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's nuts. So, yeah, I mean, that's one way of doing it. And then a lot of notes apps support this as well. Evernote, I think, still does, right? You can forward an email into it.
You can forward it. Yeah, you can. So if you've got an email that's, where there's no action on it, But this is good information. This is a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Yes, I want to save this. Well, instead of saving it in your email, no, put it over there in Evernote where you've maybe got a notebook of recipes. And so, yeah, there's just you have an Evernote email address that you have in your contacts. So I just hit forward, start typing the word Evernote, and about 3 letters in there, it appears and just automatically fills itself in, and boom, it's over there. Yeah, and like I use Remember the Milk, and same thing. I just hit forward if it's a to do. I either do it right, I either do it right then. So here are my two options. Got an email that embeds a to do it right then and be done with it, or forward it to that secret email address. And now it's in Remember the Milk. And before I hit forward, I'll just change the subject line of the email to be what the to do actually is, call Bob. Boom, forward. And the entire body of the email is a little note inside that task, and couldn't be easier. And now I can forget about it. So, yeah, I remember back when everybody was using Outlook, back in the early days of the Palm, and the Palm would sing so nicely with Outlook. And I'd show people how, well, here's an email and it's talking about an appointment, and you really need to put this on your calendar. Well, let's click the email and drag it over to the calendar button, and boom, it would create a new event. And 150 people in the audience would all take this big breath at the same time, like, what if we sliced the bread? Yeah, I had no idea that anything like that could be done. And then, hey, guess what we can do if something's a task? Let's just drag it to the task button.
Yeah, it's great. And I think like we're starting to see too, some of this stuff is starting to become automated, and how,
Yeah.
sometimes also with like learning language models, sort of doing some detective work to figure out how to string. This is the thing that's interesting, is like we're starting to see some of the AI tools make meaningful connections, but you can see how like we're just at the cusp of not like the full potential of AI, but just like all these tech companies have all these little bits that are not
Mhm.
really quite. I feel like the next decade is going to be us watching to see if they can successfully connect all the little bits of technology they have together, which is often harder than it sounds like. But like, I mean, already, like I can look in my calendar app of choice, which is Fantastic Cal, and like
Yeah.
stuff that's in my Apple Mail client, well, that like it has inferred is a calendar event, will like show up there, kind of like slightly
Mhm.
grayed out. Like, do you want to add this to, it's like kind of offering to add stuff in there for me. So, but if you think about how many productivity apps Microsoft or Google, for example, makes, it's kind of fun to imagine all of the ways they could extend and deepen those connections,
Mhm.
especially since they have so much data. It's just that none of it is talking to itself.
Yeah. And of course, everybody's trying to outdo each other because, Google always wants to stay ahead of Microsoft. Microsoft always wants to stay ahead of Google. So their products are just getting better. And, the features that are in one, just hang on, they're going to be in the other, pretty soon. But let's talk a little bit about AI, because I know there are a lot of people who are going at Chat GPT. What is that other than, oh, it's that thing of the devil, and kids are using it to cheat, and we don't need stuff like that. Um, Tell us about what are some of the ways that you're using AI?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think I'm like the world's. I'm probably like far above average in terms of people who are using AI in the world,
Yeah.
and also far above the average in terms of my cynicism towards it. I'm cynical about it, but maybe just for very different reasons than the general public is. Um, I'm not like nervous that it's gonna like the cheating thing was interesting because I was like it took talking with several very smart people to put words to it, but I knew something was fishy when teachers were complaining about the cheating, and once it became clear to me that like we're maybe not like asking our students to do very meaningful work if a chatbot can do the work, like that kind of was a
Exactly.
pretty
Yeah.
early realization that I had. Um, yeah, I mean, there's like lots of little things to be excited about. There's lots of things that I don't like about the tools, but the other thing that I like to unpack is the fact that AI is very much a buzzword, and there's actually like lots of uses for AI and things that have been happening for decades that are AI that just were not being
Mhm.
marketed as AI. Like when my
Right. Yeah.
phone can figure out which images in the photo app are images of puppies, that's AI. But
That's
like for example,
exactly. Yeah.
right. Apple
Hmm.
marketed it as machine learning until the letters AI became popular, and then all of a sudden, all those old features that are cool became AI
That's
features.
AI. Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that's not chatbots that to me I'm using that's AI because it's all like just like mixed into all of the stuff I'm using every day. But I think the more modern stuff, the stuff that people think of as AI, is this more like generative stuff. So things like where a chat bot can generate a story for you or an image of some kind. And I actually am using ChatGPT quite a lot lately, and I can certainly tell you some uses. The first thing I'll say is that what makes these tools interesting to me is again like how they can integrate with the system. And so ChatGPT has, I don't know if they have a Windows app yet, but they haven't made a Mac app that's really good. Like it's exactly what, it's not just of the website, but like running in, with an app icon that you click. Like it's actually integrates with the Mac operating system. You can program a keyboard shortcut to bring up a little chat from anywhere on your device, and you can start typing. It can actually integrate with Apple Notes, but that's unfortunately the only Apple productivity app it can look into. And I just ask it all sorts of stuff. I mean, let me see if I'm going to try to find some like professional things, but but maybe
Mhm.
it's more fun to not. I don't know. To me, like my imagination for what I can do with it professionally increases the more I use it for everything. So like, um, several hours ago, a friend of mine just finished watching the show Severance and was looking to get a fix. Has an
Okay.
itch
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
psychological thriller. And just got an HBO Max subscription. Asked me what are my favorite shows, and I was like, well, I know my favorite shows, but what does ChatGPT think? And ChatGPT gave me 7 options, which just happened to be 7 of my favorite shows on HBO. But not only that, it gave me why the show would be recommended to a person who likes Severance and what the vibes are. And
Uh-huh.
so I just like edited this response so that it was in my voice and had my own takes on it. But like the skeleton of that response was actually like pretty helpful. So it just sort of made me not have to type headings and bold things and like, you know, hit the enter key a lot. So that's
Hmm.
kind of fun. Um, I do, let's see here. Well, now I've on all my devices installed extensions that make ChatGPT my default search. So if I type into Google Chrome a search query, or if I'm on Safari on my iPhone, it'll actually just bounce it over to ChatGPT, which now has search integrated in. And then I skip all of the paid ads, which have sort of become um, a terror upon the open internet. You search
Yeah.
Google, and then like the first page is all just like paid
All
advertising.
the
So
sponsored stuff. Yeah.
I mean, ChatGPT will inevitably someday find a way to be terrible in that regard, also. But for now, I'm bypassed all of the paid stuff. It gives me a concise, short answer to my question with a couple of references, which are usually the websites that I was looking for to begin with. Um, I do a lot of I'm like just kind of being aware of my like macros when I eat lately, and it's very good at like health
Hmm.
stuff because it's just reading the internet. So the other day I asked it, I told it what tacos I ate at California Tortilla, and it gave me a macro breakdown of all the calories and stuff I ate.
My good. Yeah.
You know, this kind of thing. A lot of times in school, it'll be like some kind of busy computery thing that I'm trying to eliminate. Like, can you like I need lesson plans in this format for the next 60 days. Can you like format me an empty shell of a document but with all the headings with the dates listed out in them, and then it'll spit out basically like March 27th 2025 materials colon lesson plan colon objective colon and then March 28th 2025, and it'll just that like
Mhm.
really boring
Sure.
part of typing on a
Yeah.
computer it'll do, and then
All
I actually
all
get
of
to do the meaningful part.
the repetitive thing, the things you might delegate to a student or something. Hey, could you come in there? Or that a boss might delegate to an assistant. uh, that you basically now have that sort of assistant. Yeah.
Now, I will say with these chatbots, they still hallucinate quite a lot. So I find that I have to check its work quite a lot more than I would check the work of an
Mm.
actual human assistant who I trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I find the same thing. It does the best it can, but you do have to check up behind it. But you're not starting with you're not starting with the blank page. You can take what it gives you and take it for what it's worth, and take the good stuff, ignore the bad stuff, change the bad stuff, augment it, but you're not having to start with a blank page.
And that's
And
big because there's been so many things in my life where the content is there or the action, the will is there to do something. And there's been some sort of administrative or logistic task that I just could not break through. And one of my computing journeys has been just trying to like chip away at those things that kind of make me, freeze in the middle of my
mhm.
task, and instead kind of keep a flow state going with what I want to actually do in my professional work and what I find meaningful.
Yeah, yeah. And I use it a lot just to critique my own writing. I
Mm.
enjoy writing. I'm not a particularly good typist, so I introduced all kinds of typos, and I'm thinking one word, but I type another word, and I'm really not good at proofreading my own stuff because my eyes see what my brain meant to type instead of really what I did type. And so to just throw that into Chat GPT or Claude and one, let it catch my errors and let it give me suggestions. As I write, I write more and more in the style of me. I become more like myself. And to have one of those models, Claude or ChatGPT, I really like Claude for the writing, where I'll ask it to critique it to give me suggestions, and it'll say, this particular sentence could be a little offensive to some people. Try this instead. And you go, I really hadn't thought about it that way, but I guess it's right. Or, this was a good point that you made here, but leave it at once. Don't come back here and make the same point again. It kind of sounds like, your audience is stupid that they didn't catch it the first time and you have to say it again. So it's kind of like that another opinion that has been drawn from, I guess, the world's knowledge. So
That's an
I'm
interesting
enjoying it.
layer.
Yeah,
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 because like for me, when I use them, it's more like structural and like um, semantic kinds of feedback. But the idea that your actual like content of your ideas could could have that kind of refinement
yeah,
to them, and
yeah.
that's got that kind of insight is interesting. You say that's Claude that's giving you that deeper
Yeah,
level of
Claude,
insight.
I found like Claude for me is the best for writing. And then there are other things like, for instance, Gemini that for our audience is produced by Google. Let's say I'm I've got a YouTube video, and either maybe I don't want to watch the whole thing. I just kind of like a summary without me having to watch it. Or on the other hand, I'm really interested in this video. I'm going to take notes, but I sure would like to not start with a blank piece of paper. If I say to Chat GPT, hey, could you give me a summary of this video? And I paste the URL, Chat GPT will say, uh, no, I can't give you a summary, but I can tell you how you can go to YouTube and download a transcript, and then you could bring the transcript back here and blah, 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 blah. And if I do the exact same thing with Gemini, because Google loves Google, could you give me a summary of this YouTube video? Paste the link. Well, and there's a nice outline form with little timestamps. And so, again, if I don't want to watch the video, well, I've got my little summary. And if I do want to watch the video and really take copious notes, I've already got a good starting place. So Gemini will give that to me, but ChatGPT won't. So it's sort of like
And
having different tools for slightly
yeah,
different things, you know?
I think that's healthy for
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
industry. And but I'll also say this, like I gotta mention my fruit company here, Apple is doing famously kind of fumbling this moment right now. Um, like their vision for what Apple Intelligence could be is to me the exciting dream vision of what it can be, which is that it can do all of this meaningful generative stuff, but with the context of your actual data, like the people who say
Oh.
are saved in my phone, my notes, my emails, my photos, like meaningful relationships and a meaningful assistant that are looking into that kind of context and all with
Hmm.
the kinds of privacy decisions that they're known for. But Apple is also not characteristically like good at this kind of thing, and I think it's like there was news several weeks ago that their plans to have basically an AI layer that can understand data inside of your first and third party apps and can also act inside of those apps all through voice. They've said that they're delaying that feature, and
Oh.
while it is a pipe dream, it seems like there's clearly like a lot of difficulty doing it in practice. And what I'm hoping they and some of these other companies who make hardware are going to do is realize that much in the same way that you know that like the early PCs became platforms for good
Uh-huh.
apps to run. And like if you really prefer like I really love Mac OS, and I can't imagine using another platform, but I use so many non-Apple apps on it. That doesn't change
Sure.
that
Yeah.
Apple is competitive with Mac OS. I still prefer Mac OS, but I think in this same way, Apple, Google, Samsung, they need to create an operating system where other AI tools can sort of build upon that rather than it's not kind of going in like direct competition with them. Because I
Yeah.
like already Siri and the new version of iOS can access ChatGPT, but it has no smarts about when to or not to ask ChatGPT. So sometimes I'll ask it a question and it'll fail at answering it. Other times I'll ask it in the same words, but it'll pass it to ChatGPT. But ChatGPT can't save any of the chats I do that are initiated through Siri. Like it's just a big
Huh?
mess. And it's like, I wish Apple and these other companies would just say like, all right, we're going to make the best place that you can use ChatGPT. We're going to make
Yeah.
but not just them, Gemini too, Claude, all these things. And then you can sort of like use what they're all specialized at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Robbie, we could talk, I think, for forever about, the the ways that technology is making our life better, and it's fun, and it's gotten so much easier. You remember the old DOS commands from Daisy, and the computer that cost $5,000 and maybe had a meg of storage or something like that way back then. So, where can people find out more about you and kind of follow you as new things come out?
Um, I'm really into the web, the open web these days. So I am
Okay.
on lots of social platforms, but RobbyBurns.com is my central hub on the web. And it does have a link in the heading out to my blog. But if you want to go directly there, musicedtechtalk.com will take you there. I actually just migrated my blog over. It's kind of like a slow work in progress, but I
Right.
am
Yeah.
now posting my over there on this. It's like it used to be sort of just like attached to robbyburns.com, but now it's like its own website. And I'm different variations of Robbie Burns on the different social platforms. I'm most active on Blue Sky and Mastodon, but I've got a Threads account, a TikTok account. My YouTube, I sometimes do tech
Okay.
videos up there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'll put links to all of that in the body of the blog post, and so that our folks can come your way and keep up with what you're doing and everything, and apply some of these tools that we have been talking about.
absolutely.
Yeah. So Robbie, thanks again. This has been a pleasure. I've enjoyed being on your show and glad to have you on this one.
I'm so grateful to be here. It's always so fun to go at the productivity stuff with you.
All right. Thanks. So you have a good evening.
You as well.
And that's the interview. So what was your biggest takeaway? Leave us a comment and be sure to come over to the blog post on frankbuck.org for much more. Thanks for stopping by. This has been Frank Buck helping you get organized and make it look easy.